So, a couple of days ago I was trying to think of possible video ideas that weren't just another book haul, although I will be doing a July book haul hopefully sometime this week or next week. But I wanted to do something that was a little bit different, and I realized that I haven't really talked on this channel about one of my favorite authors slash series slash whatever you want to call it, and one of the coolest experiences I've ever had in my life. Back in March, let me start off by talking about how this whole thing started. My senior year of high school, so like 2 years ago almost, I went on the class trip to South Carolina, and we stopped at this mall to eat lunch on the way back, and there was a bookstore, so obviously that's what I gravitated towards. So I went to Books A Million and I saw These Broken Stars, and it was a complete impulse buy, total cover buy. I just saw like sci-fi space and I just grabbed it and I immediately started reading it on the bus. It took me a couple months to finish it though. Like, I loved it, but for whatever reason the books in this series just take me forever to get through. Like, I don't know what it is about them. Like, it just takes me forever to get through them. But fast forward a little bit later, Amy Kaufman, who is one of the authors of this book, and Jay Kristoff were doing a book tour for Gemini, which is the second book in the Illuminae series. Also really, really great books. But they were coming to Asheville, which is like an hour from my hometown, so I was like, yes, I need to go, I have to go. And since the other author of this book, Megan Spooner, lives in Asheville, she kind of tagged along for that tour date and was sort of like the moderator for the Q&A that they were doing. So we went to this little tiny like independent bookstore, and it was really cool and I really loved it, but I got this book signed by Megan and Amy, and then I got Nevernight signed by Jay Kristoff, which is, he's one of the coolest dudes I've ever met, and if I feel like it, or if anyone wants it, I'll make a video talking about that whole story, because that's another cool story. But that was back in November, and I go to school in Raleigh, so I drove 3 hours home from Raleigh, spent the night at home, drove an hour to Asheville the next day with my mom. So March rolls around, and Megan Spooner has her new book coming out called Hunted. And it's basically a Beauty and the Beast retelling. I know there's like a million of these out, but this was a really, really great book and I really enjoyed it. But once again, drove home from Raleigh 3 hours on like a Thursday night? Yeah, I think it was a Thursday night, because this was on St. Patrick's Day, and I think St. Patrick's Day was on Friday this year. But drove home from Raleigh, spent the night at home, drove to Asheville by myself the next day, and I got to Barnes & Noble like an hour early, and I'm just walking around, and as soon as I walk in the door, like the security thing goes off, because I had brought this from my home Barnes & Noble, and like I walk over to the counter, I'm like, I walked in with this book for the book signing, like, I'm not trying to steal it, and she's like, no big deal, I saw you walk in. She does the little like security device thing, and it's all good. So I'm walking around the store, and I always feel bad going to a book signing, like bringing my own books and not supporting that bookstore. So I bought all 3 of the books in another series by Megan Spooner, got her to sign all of them. But anyway, I'm just chilling out in like the little cafe area because I kind of scoped out the store, and they didn't have anywhere set up for like a Q&A. Like, I go to a book signing, I'm expecting sort of like, you know, the author up on sort of little pedestal, and then everyone there like just sitting in chairs, talking to the author, doing a Q&A, and then like a book signing line. They had nowhere set up for that. I'm like, okay, that's a little weird. Maybe they're just waiting until she gets here and like, you know, then they'll start moving stuff around. They never did, and I'm like sitting over in the cafe area, and I see her walk in, and she like walks to the back of the store, and I'm like, ah, she's here. and like they never set anything up. They had one table set up right inside the doors with stacks of her books on it, and they had her sit there the entire time she was there just to sign books. Like there was no Q&A, there was no other like special thing. It's just like, okay, here's an author, get your book signed, buy her books, whatever. But anyway, she gets set up at her little table, and I walk over with my a huge bag of 4 books, and I'm like, I know it's a little early, but do you mind? Like, do you want me to wait? Do you want to wait? You know, she's like, no, I don't mind. Like, let's go ahead and get them signed. And, like, you know, I had posted on Twitter, like, yeah, my family thinks I'm crazy because I drove 4 hours to get a book signed, but, you know, totally worth it. And she goes, were you the one that drove 4 hours? And she goes, and I go, yeah. And she goes, dude, that's so awesome. Like, thank you so much. And I'm like, okay. Like, just totally fangirling out. Somehow it came out that I had just switched to being a creative writing major and like wanted to be an author. So like we talked about that a little bit, and we talked about how like when she was in school she had to switch to like film or theater because her writing department at her school wouldn't let her write like genre books. It was always straight up fiction. And she's like, dude, you're so lucky that they let you write whatever you want. And I'm like, yeah, a little bit. You know, like, I'm just so happy to be here kind of thing. And like no one else showed up. Like there was a couple people that worked at Barnes & Noble that came in to grab books, and there was a couple people that like just walked in like, oh hey, there's an author, and they looked at the books but they didn't grab any. I pretty much stayed there and talked to her for an hour and a half because no one else showed up. But it worked in my favor because she had 3 other author friends kind of walk up and like hang out with her. And every time a new one walked up, she goes, oh, this is Courtney. She wants to be a writer, or she's a writer too. She drove 4 hours to be here. And I'm like, I sound like such a crazy fangirl right now. And like, Stephanie Perkins is one of the author friends that walked up, and like, I haven't read any of her books, but she's like very well known. So like, just being there with her, and she's like, oh hey, tell me about your writing, what kind of stuff do you write? I'm just like, I don't know. And Alexandra Duncan, I think, was one of the other ones. Yeah, Alexandra Duncan, which I have yet to read any of her stuff, but I really want to because it sounded really cool. And then there was a 3rd author that walked up that I never got her name, but I didn't like recognize her. But that was just so cool, just getting to sit there for an hour and a half and talk to 4 authors that are like, you know, actually getting published and actually pretty well known. And then they're sitting there and they're asking me about the kind of stuff that I'm writing, and, you know, are telling me that I'm lucky because where I go to school lets me write whatever I want. And like, we stood there, we talked about Beauty and the Beast, we talked about Jurassic Park, we talked about writing, obviously. But it was just a really cool experience. And like, as far as book signings go, like, I felt bad for Megan Spooner because, you know, she expected to have a Q&A, and then they just put her up at this little table, and she even told me, she's like, this is the worst part about being an author, is like, sometimes you'll go to these places and they'll just give you a table and you'll be like an animal on display kind of thing. But it was really encouraging just to like have these authors be so interested in what I was doing, even though I've never finished a flippin' novel to save. I cannot finish a novel to save my life, and it's really annoying. But it was just like one of the coolest nights of my life. I almost died on the drive home though because it was raining and we had just gotten my oil changed, and the guys that did my oil change kind of fucked my car up, and I hydroplaned. Didn't go off the road, didn't hit anything, but it was enough to like scare the ever-loving shit out of me. So yeah, it was like really great night. almost ruined by my death. But you know what? I would have died happy just because, yeah, like as far as book signings go, I don't think I could have asked for a better situation for myself, because like I kept asking her, you know, are you cool with me just kind of hanging out here? She's like, no, stay as long as you want, like there's no one else here, you know, it's cool if you just want to stay and chill. I'm like, okay, cool. And then I got a picture that I might put in here somewhere, but it's literally the most awkward picture that I've ever taken because I looked really bad. And like she's sitting in her chair and I just kind of kneeled down next to her and like holding my book, and I'm trying to smile, but smiling is really hard for me sometimes. It's the whole resting bitch face thing. But yeah, it was a really good night, and I just kind of wanted to share that story, even though I'm kind of just rambling about it, and I'll probably cut out a lot of this video, but you know what? It's okay. It was a good night, and I wanted to do something different for a change in a video. I'm hoping, because Amy Kaufman and Megan Spooner have a new book coming out called Unearthed that's coming out like early next year. Megan told me that they probably will do some kind of book signing in Asheville again, so hopefully I will get to go to that. And also Amy and Jay Kristoff will have the third book in Illuminate coming out in March, which I already have pre-ordered. I've had it pre-ordered for months now because I am impatient. Maybe they'll do something too and I'll go to that one again, and yeah, that's my story. It's lame and fangirly, but it was so flippin' cool and like so inspiring to get to meet like 3 extra authors that I was not expecting to meet that night. But yeah, bye.